Hi everybody, it's Geordie from Geordie's Cards. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to be creating these Mama Elephant Wreath Shaker Easter cards. Now this Wreath Shaker die came out as a Christmas release, but I didn't see any reason why we couldn't use it for Easter as well. So the supplies I used are the little Chickie agenda from Mama Elephant, the little Bunnie agenda from Mama Elephant, and the Mama Elephant Wreath Shaker die. So I started out by stamping my images using Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink onto some Transotype perfect colouring paper. I chose 8 images from each stamp set. I ended up only using 7. There are 8 kind of shaker holes around the wreath, if that makes sense, but with the bow I decided that 7 was enough. So once my images were stamped, I went ahead and coloured them. For my bunnies I used E53, E51 and E50, and as always just did darkest, medium and the lightest colour. I kept the colouring very basic today, just did 1 layer on each image. They're very, very small and they're really quite simple to colour, but there were lots to colour, so I just kept it very, very simple today. So off camera, I went ahead and did all the rest of the bunnies, and then I'm moving on to my little chicks. So I used Y15, Y13 and Y11 for those guys. And again, exactly the same thing, darkest to medium to lightest, and just 1 coat of each colour and just blend it out. So again, I'm going to show you a couple of those on screen, and then I'll do the rest off screen because otherwise the colouring will take forever. But these are so much fun to colour. I love these little agenda stamps. I wasn't sure about them at first, but now I have quite a growing collection of them. So for the eggs, I used the same colours as I used for the rabbits. I did E53, E51 and E50 just because they were out on my desk. So the little agenda stamps, when I first saw them, I was kind of like, oh, they're so small. How would you make a card out of them? And then I got one set. I think my first set was actually these little bunny agendas, and I kind of just fell in love with them. And I've got a very big collection of the little agenda sets now. And I love that Mama Elephant come out with these dies that make it really easy to create lovely cards from them. And I see that in their new release, they have a little succulent agenda, and they've got a new kind of agenda die, which is like a panel die. So I'm kind of interested in that. I'm going to have to see. I'm not going to go ahead and commit to anything yet. For the little beaks of the chicks, I used YR02. And then I went in with some R20 and just added some little highlights to the rabbit's ears and added some blush to their cheeks and did their noses. And I did that for all of the images, actually add some little cheeks to them. For the little plant pots, I wanted them to look like terracotta pots. So I used E97 and E95. And again, just kept it very, very simple, just a little bit of shading for those ones. For the little paint pots, I used N0 and N2. Just wanted them to look like little metal paint tins. And I just, again, darkest and then the lightest colour, just adding a tiny bit of shadow to them just to give them some dimension and interest. So for the little chick who's wearing I think it's an Easter bonnet, I think it's so adorable. I think this might be my favourite image. I used E40 and E42. I kind of wanted it to look a little bit like a straw hat, but I just wanted to use some of the same colours that I was going to use for other things. So I just used those 2 colours and added a little bit of shadow around the edges. And then I also used those colours later on the paintbrush. For the little carrots, I used YR00 and YR02, and I just love these colours. They're really, really pretty, very subtle kind of pastel orange colour. And that was the kind of look I was going for, quite a pastel look. G02 and G00 for the carrot tops and any little bits of greenery around the little guys that are sitting in the plant pots. I just used the darkest colour, so G02 for the little leaves of the plants in the plant pot. Now for my little paint on my egg, I'm using R83 and R85. Again, these are some of my favourite pink colours, a very rosy kind of pink colour, and I really like it. Going back in with my G00 and G02 to add some different coloured paint to this guy who's wearing it on his head. And I just think he's so cute. These images are just adorable. If you haven't got any of these sets, definitely check them out. I just love them. R24 and R22 to colour in the little strawberry, and also the little heart, and then the little cupcake. I added a little bit to that as well. And I added E42 and E40 to the rest of the cupcake. Kind of wanted it to look like a strawberry vanilla cupcake. And here I am going into the paintbrush with those E40 markers as well. And I did do the top of it. I ended up adding a little bit of darker, I think E43 marker to that later on. And then the N0 and N2 to the silver parts of the paintbrush, the kind of metal parts you get on the paintbrush, and to the cupcake case. Back in with my greens for the strawberry top, and then R85 and R83 for the little ribbon on the little chick's bonnet. And I wanted that flower to look like a daisy, so I just used Y13, I think it was, for the center of the flower, and then I just left it. It's absolutely tiny, so I think even trying to add any type of color to that would make it look gray rather than white. So the little bow tie I did in G00 and G02, and then it was time to go in with my white Jelly Roll pen and just add some highlight details to everything. So off camera, I went ahead and fussy cut all of these. I don't have the coordinating dies. I actually don't mind fussy cutting. I find it quite relaxing. I did realize that I'd forgotten to color a few little things, so I did add some color to those. And then I went ahead and got my dies out, and I did a whole heap of die cutting. So I cut those pieces from Lawn Fawn 110 pound cardstock. These ones are from the Lawn Fawn Gotta Have Gingham original Gotta Have Gingham paper collection. So I did one of the kind of backing pieces and the bows in those gingham colours. And then Ballet slippers and Sage Lawn Fawn cardstock for the tops. And then I cut from a bunch of just scrap kind of white cardstock that I have. I cut 12 of those frames, and then two of the acetate pieces just from some acetate. So now I'm going to glue the acetate to the kind of wreath top. The acetate is larger than the wreath top, but I will trim that down later. It's just easier. I found it easier to die cut something to back on for the acetate to back onto, rather than trying to eyeball how big to cut the acetate. So I just found that the easiest way to do it. So I'm using liquid glue. It can get a little bit messy, but I just keep a paper towel there, and it buffs off the acetate really nicely if you use paper towel. So it's fine if you get any smears of it onto the acetate. And now I'm just going to stack all of these white rings up on top of each other so that I have 6 stacked together in total. This is going to create my shaker well. So I did most of this off camera because there was a lot. So just went ahead off camera, and you can see I've got nice dimension there now, and it's nice and sturdy and thick. Now it's time to trim off the rest of that acetate piece like I was talking about, and just make sure that it's all nice and even around the edge. Again, I did most of that off camera because I didn't think you'd want to watch all of that. So now it's kind of assembly time. So the first thing I do is add some liquid glue to the back of my stacked piece, and then add it onto that gingham part of the paper. Once I'd done that for both of my colours, it was time to add my kind of shaker elements. So I used my powder tool to try and get rid of most of the stick inside the little wells. This tends to work quite well. Obviously, I'm using some really fine glitter, so it does kind of stick to the acetate a little bit, but that's okay. It just adds a nice bit of sparkle. So I don't have much in the way of shaker elements in my stash. I really need to invest in some more of those. So I just kind of hunted around and had a look to see what I had, and I had this kind of white glitter, and then I had these little kind of green and pink glitter. Now these are really, really fine, really fine glitters. So they do kind of stick to everything, but they look pretty and they really sparkle. So I really like the look of them. And I was just trying to go with kind of similar colours to what I had in the paper. So I'm just adding bits of that to the shaker wells, and then I do have these kind of little clear crystals that I ended up just adding a few to each one, just to kind of bulk up the shaker elements and help everything move around a little bit. I find that if you have kind of bigger parts in there, it will definitely move better. Once that was done, it was time to attach the top part with the acetate on. And again, I just used liquid glue, and I'm just putting it in the parts that you're not going to see the glue. And then lining it up. I like using liquid glue because it gives me a little bit of wiggle room to get everything in place and in the right spot. I'm not always good at doing that the first time around, so I like to have that little bit of maneuverability. So I just did that for both of them and made sure that it was all nicely lined up. Once that was done, I went ahead and assembled the little bows. Now these bows are lovely because they have some dimension. So there's different pieces. I should have started with the tail. I didn't. I started with the top of the bow, but that's okay because I was using liquid glue. I had a little bit of time to kind of slip it underneath. And it's just a case of lining all the layers up, and it kind of just makes it look like a little dimensional bow, which is really, really sweet. So once the bows were completed, it was time to create my card bases, and this is what I'm using the white 110 pound cardstock for. So I'm just putting it in my scoreboard and then scoring it about 1/2 inch, and I tried to make it so that the kind of top of the card was one of the bumps, if that makes sense. So I just did that to 2 pieces, just scored them. I probably should have folded them, but that's okay, I folded them afterwards. And then I took some double-sided tape and just added it onto that little part that I'd scored, and that's how I'm going to attach my 2 card pieces together. So once the card base was made, it was time to kind of assemble everything together. I wanted to add some twine so that you could use these as a little kind of decoration. So I had this lawn fawn twine in my cardstock, and I can't remember what it's called, but I will put the name of it in the description below. And I just took 2 little pieces from that, and then I added some double-sided tape to the card base at the top again, and then just stuck the pieces of twine down on top of those, and then I used liquid glue to adhere the top of the card to the bottom. So once that was done, it was time to play around with the placement of my images. I decided to go with the little chickies on the green card and the little bunnies on the pink card. And I played around with these for a little bit. It started out with, as I said, 8 images, but once I tried to put the bow on, I found it was a little bit too crowded. So I removed one of the images and just kept it to 7 images for each one. So onto the sentiment, I stamped this using the Lawn Fawn Before and Afters Easter set. It's just got a little sentiment that says Happy Easter. For the pink one, I used Lawn Fawn Bubblegum ink, and for the green one, I used Lawn Fawn Minty Fresh ink. And I just stamped that out a few times each time with each colour, and then I cut those apart into little strips. And you can see now I've got everything kind of assembled. It's just a case of adding my sentiments on top. So you can see I put the bow on, and I felt that there wasn't enough room for all 8 images. So I just removed one from each set and just had 7 instead. So just using liquid glue, I use liquid glue for everything on this card. I just found it easier, apart from obviously adding the twine and connecting my 2 card bases together. And I really enjoyed making this. I really do love these little agenda images. They're so much fun. I have got the hamster little agenda, which I haven't used yet, so I'm going to have to get that out at some point and make a card with that. But I hope you enjoyed these little Easter wreaths. I really enjoyed making them. They were lots and lots of fun. As always, I would love to hear what you thought, so please leave a comment. Please subscribe to my channel and please give me a thumbs up, and I'd love you to join me again sometime. Thanks so much. Bye.